Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Read Good, Draw Bad, where we love to read really good and draw really quite bad. So today we are in, yet again, it is that time of year, award season, and it's specifically book awards season. And I've been looking at various book prizes like the Booker Prize, and I think it's the Scotiabank Giller Prize that has come out recently, which has some really interesting entries on it. And the Scotiabank Giller Prize I talk about on my TikTok channel. I think this year there's a fantastic selection of Canadian books that are out for prize, finalists, and awards. However, we are not here to talk about Canadian books today. Instead, today we're talking about the Goodreads 2023 Reader's Choice Awards. And I hope I said that right. No, wrong. It's the Goodreads Choice Awards 2023. Say that 5 times fast. In case you didn't watch my video last year on the Goodreads Choice Awards 2022, Goodreads is a platform that allows other readers to connect with other readers about books they love, and even though it's starting to be a platform that makes more and more people angry, it's still the platform that everyone uses. Goodreads every year puts out a list of books in different categories because they do sort of a first round where they select a bunch of books that people have found really popular and well-reviewed that year, and then they do a final round where they pick sort of the top 8, and those books are then voted on to see who is the final winner in the Hunger Games of the book reviews, as I like to call it. I think the 2022 list, a lot of those finalists and the winners are still very relevant. Although I will say how Carrie Soto got her groove back, how it won over all the other books is still a mystery to me, but whatever. Okay, so just like last year, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the book list. This year I've really been focusing on the Modern Library's best 100 novels of the 20th century. So it's entirely possible I won't recognize any of these books, but also if I do find a book that's interesting, maybe we can just look at it together and we can discuss whether we think that book sounds like a lot of fun or not. Okay, so let's look at the best books of 2023, according to the Goodreads Choice Awards. Here are the categories this year. We have fiction, historical fiction, mystery and thriller, romance, a new category, it's called romantasy, which I guess is a combination of romance and fantasy. Fantasy, science fiction, horror, young adult fantasy, young adult fiction, a debut novel category, nonfiction, memoir and autobiography, and history and biography and humor. And I'm really looking forward to the humor category. I think there have been a lot of great humor books that have come out this year. Okay, so let's start with fiction, like I always do when I talk about my age. One of them is Yellowface. This book I've seen in a lot of places. Dina dies in a freak accident. June steals her unpublished manuscript and publishes it as her own under the ambiguous name Juniper Song. I think this might be the one that wins the category. I mean, that's just my guess. So there's a book by Ellen Hilderbrand here called The 5-Star Weekend, which I swear was on last year's list. It really looks a bit generic. Anyways, we're gonna move on from that. The Invisible Hour. Why don't we click on it? Let's see what The Invisible Hour is all about. She was raised in the community, in capital letters. Oh, it's a book about a cult. Okay, let's move on to the next category, historical fiction. I tend to gloss over the historical fiction section unless there's something that really grabs me. There's a book that has a crow on it, so I'll click on it. So it looks like Wayward is a story about different women who had something to do with the witch trials, the witch hunts, in the United States. One of the top reviews, though, says 3 women in different time periods who, like nature, are treated horribly by men. So that gives me a pause. Okay, so now we're on to best mystery and thriller. Whodunit? This year, I've been paying a little bit more attention to mystery and thrillers. Housemaid's Secret, I've seen around. That looks interesting. I'm going to click on The Last Devil to Die because I really like the cover. This book is about an old friend in antiques business. I cannot say business today. Has been killed and a dangerous package he was protecting has gone missing. Classic setup. I already love it. As the gang I guess this is, Thursday Murder Club number 4. I wonder what happened to the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday murder clubs. Oh boy. There's something called Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers, and it is a 60-year-old self-proclaimed tea expert, Vera Wong, who is also going to solve murder mysteries. And this is perfect for me, because if you know me, I love stories about older men and women having adventures. Okay, let's move on to romance. And it will either be great or terrible. Could be both. There's a terrifying cover called Final Offer by Lauren Asher, which looks very scary, so I need to know what it's about. It looks weird. There's a book just called Romantic Comedy, a Novel. A comedy writer thinks she's sworn off love. That seems like it could be a solid holiday read. The Many Lives of Theoretical Physicist Elsie Hanaway may have finally caught up with her. By day, she's a professor, and then by other day, she makes up her non-existent paycheck by offering her services as a fake girlfriend, tapping into her expertly honed people-pleasing skills to embody whichever version of herself the client needs. Ooh, that sounds spicy and also a little problematic, and I'll probably love it. Okay, the best romantasy. And I already know who's gonna win, but let's go through them anyway. So, The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros is a book that's kind of taken TikTok by storm, just as being a romantic fantasy. People say they've laughed, they've cried. It goes to War College for Dragon Raiders. If you have a dragon, it'll probably be popular. There's a hilarious sounding book called Assistant to the Villain, so I'm going to check it out. Okay, TikTok series turned novel. It's Once Upon a Time meets The Office. That sounds wonderful. Here we are in Best Fantasy, which I feel like I may have missed last year. So the one that I'm not surprised to see here is the hit sensation of Travis Baldry's follow-up novel, which is called Bookshops and Bone Dust. And this is a follow-up to the other novel that he did called Legends and Lattes, which is a super fun, heartwarming romance, lots of great elements to it, and low on the violence. And at the time, it was the perfect book to read. It was an amazing holiday read, so highly recommended. So there's something here called the Encyclopedia of Fairies, which I have seen around and I have heard about. And there's a V. Schwab book, which any V. Schwab book I think is worth reading. All right, let's move on to science fiction. Okay, so a Martha Wells book is here, which I'm not surprised, which is continuation of the Murderbot series, which if you haven't started it, I highly recommend it. It's an excellent book series. The next one, which I'm not shocked about, which is In the Lives of Puppets by T.J. Klune, who, if you know T.J. Klune, he also wrote The House by the Cerulean Sea, which was a smash hit. The Ferryman looks like it has the worst cover I think I've ever seen. Starter Villain, though, which has just a cat in a suit on the cover, is my kind of book. Okay, next we're gonna do the horror category. I probably won't know most of these books. I do recognize How to Sell a Haunted House, which had huge buzz when it was first coming out. Who doesn't want to know how to sell a haunted house? Okay, let's move on to the best young adult fantasy and science fiction. I'll be honest with you, I actually don't recognize most of the books in the final round nominees for best young adult fantasy or science fiction. Okay, let's move on to young adult fiction. Great news, I do recognize some of the young adult fiction, so I'm not completely out of touch. We have The Brothers Hawthorne, which is the finale of the Inheritance Games, which I'm so looking forward to reading. I love Jennifer Lynn Barnes' writing. I think it's really fun and punchy, and One of Us is Back is the third book that I didn't even know was out yet, but it's from the series One of Us is Lying, which I have read, and I thought it was an excellent young adult book, and I think a lot of young adults would really enjoy it. All right, let's move on to debut novel. Usually what happens with the Goodreads Choice Awards is books that are in other genre categories often end up here as sort of a first book that people really loved this particular year. It just really caught on. So there are ones that I do see from other categories here, like The September House, The Wishing Game, and the debut novel. It's nice. It looks like there's a good mix of different genres, which is always good to see. You don't want to see too heavy on the romance or fantasy or sci-fi side. And in best nonfiction, I do recognize some of these books. One of them is Doppelganger by Naomi Klein. And if you've read any of Naomi Klein's work, she's very prolific, she's really well thought out, and so I will probably be reading this over the holidays. There's a book by Matthew Desmond, another book on poverty by America. This sounds fantastic. If you haven't read, I believe it's called Evicted by Matthew Matthew Desmond, an amazing read, highly recommend it. Now, in the memoir and autobiography category, I actually do know most of these, and I think because it's been a really great year for memoirs and autobiographies. In the past 2 years, people have become really interested in the stories of celebrities and people who have had really interesting lives. So, unsurprisingly, Prince Harry Spare, his biography is here. Love Pamela by Pamela Anderson is here. The Britney Spears, The Woman in Me autobiography, which apparently the audiobook is excellent, so highly recommend. There is a book by Jill Duggar, so there's the Duggar family, which I'm not even going to get into, but one of the family members has released a story about all of the abuse that was involved in that family. Yes, there's Page Boy by Elliot Page, which made a huge splash sort of near the start of the year, if I remember correctly. Okay, the best history and biography. So The Wager by David Gran, I have seen around and I've heard a lot about it. Another biography on Martin Luther King Jr. So that could be really interesting if you're interested in his life. And now finally, we're getting to the category I really want to read about, which is humor. So the first one is Maria Bamford's Sure I'll Join Your Cult, which the title is hilarious. And Maria Bamford is a Canadian comic, but she has a very silly brand of humor, so it might not be for everyone. Being Henry by Henry Winkler, I'm sure this would be an awesome book. Henry Winkler has had an amazing career. He just seems like such an incredibly interesting human. I could totally see myself picking this up. There's Black Friend Essays by Z-Way, and if you don't follow Z-Way on TikTok, I highly recommend you do so. There's Leslie Bleeping Jones, the biography, and I will probably read this. Humor category, looks fun, looks funny. Whew, all right, well that was a lot of books to review. I definitely went through the entire list this time, I think. A lot of the categories have solid entries. Most of these books you could pick up. Most of these books would be an excellent holiday read. There are some great books coming out right now. Almost oversaturated with the good books. Thanks so much for watching. I really enjoyed doing this list. I love doing reaction videos like this. If you want to know more, I'll leave the list in the description below. And as always, stay curious, stay reading.